Tonight we are reading Aussie Bites, a Box of Chicks. Let's start this new story. Chapter 1, A Scientific Experiment. Melvyn was interested in everything. He once went with his class to the botanical gardens to see the carnivorous plants. Like the other boys, he poked his finger into the Venus flytrap to see if it would bite him. "Where's Melvyn?" the teacher asked a few minutes later. Oh no, what happened to Melvyn? The children stared nervously at the Venus flytrap. But no, Melvyn hadn't been eaten. There he was, down at their feet, his bottom in the air, searching for tiny creatures under the leaves. Most of all, Melvyn loved animals. They loved him back, it seemed. Birds would fly down to sit on his shoulder. Cats rubbed themselves against his legs, and dogs followed him home from school. This was especially embarrassing because Melvyn went home on the bus. Melvyn's school was a very large one. It had kids from kindergarten right up to high school. The Year 12s were huge, much taller than Melvyn, who still had a year or two of primary school to go. He and his classmates stayed out of the way of the high school kids most of the time. But one day, on the way back from his tuba lesson, Melvyn collided with a Year 12 giant. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. The boy didn't seem to mind. He was much more concerned with something in his hands. Melvyn couldn't see what it was because those hands were cupped in the shape of a ball. Aiming the tuba more carefully now, Melvyn was about to walk on. But wait, a girl came by. Her hands cupped in the same way. "What have you got there?" Melvyn asked. The boy and the girl looked at one another, smiling. "Would you like to see?" said the girl. Of course Melvyn wanted to see. Wasn't he interested in everything? The girl lowered her hands, her fingers and palms touching gingerly so that she wouldn't crush whatever lay inside. Then she drew back her thumbs, and there it was, a bright yellow ball. A yellow ball. The yellow ball was moving. "It's a baby chicken." "That's right," said the girl, smiling. "It's only 1 day old." Melvyn looked around the playground. There were big kids everywhere. "You've all got one," he declared. "But where did you get them? Are they selling them at the canteen?" The Year 12s laughed. "No, they were given to us for a science experiment." Melvyn loved science, but he had heard stories about what happened to rats and frogs during science classes. "What kind of experiment?" he asked suspiciously. One of the boys guessed what he was afraid of. "We're not going to hurt the little things. We watch them hatch from the egg, and once they see us, they think we're their mother. It's called imprinting. Here, do you want to touch him?" He opened his hands a little more to make room for Melvyn's finger. "So soft," he breathed. The boy put the chick carefully on the ground and backed away. The little bundle of yellow followed him. "He does think you're his mother," Melvyn said. The boy backed away faster this time, moving in a circle around Melvyn. The chick followed. It had a tuft of white down on its head. The tuft bobbed from side to side as it ran. Suddenly the chick stopped and began to cheep. "Here we go again," said the boy. "Mummy's coming," he said, picking up the chick and cradling it between his palms. The cheeping stopped. "He's warm again now." "You're so lucky," said Melvyn. "No, this is boring," said a second girl who had just joined the group. "I'll be glad when we can give them back." "Give them back? What do you mean?" "Oh, we don't keep them." "Can I have one then? That one," he said, pointing to the chick with the tuft of white down on its head. "It's all right by me," said the boy, "but the lab assistant has to collect them after school. You should ask him." Chapter 2, The Lab Assistant. Melvyn went back to his friends. "Hey fellas, wait till you hear this," he called. Within 3 minutes, every boy in Melvyn's class wanted a chick. When school was finished, they set off to claim them. Melvyn led the way and after a few false turns found the science wing. A broken sign on the wall said "Lab Assist" with an with an arrow pointing to a dingy room at the end of the corridor. The other boys became silent when Mervyn knocked. There was no reply at first. "Hello, is anyone there?" "Yo, I'm here," called a voice. Moments later, a head poked out of the doorway. "Marty, at your service." Marty was a young man, not much older than the Year 12s. He didn't often see kids from the primary school. "You must be lost." "No, we're not lost. We've come about the baby chickens." Marty looked surprised. "How do you know about the chickens?" Mervyn explained. Then he asked the most important question of all. "Can we have one? One each, I mean." "You're joking," said Marty. He stepped back as though he was going to close the door. "Please," Mervyn urged him, "we'll take good care of them." "No, I can't let you have them." "Why not? What are you going to do with them?" Now this very question had been weighing on Marty's mind. Normally, he would take the chicks back to the farm where he had bought them. But this was Friday afternoon and Marty wanted to get away to the beach. He stood looking at the eager boys. "You really want the chicks?" he asked. The boys nodded. Their eyes were bright with hope. Marty thought for a moment. If he gave the chicks to these boys, he wouldn't need to drive out to the farm at all. "All right," he said. "Here, take your pick." He led the boys into his room where a cardboard box sat on the bench. He opened the box and there they were, a dozen tiny chickens, all of them cheeping loudly. Mervyn saw a little tuft of white on the head of one. He picked it out from the rest and held it safely in his hands. He couldn't help smiling as the softness tickled his palms. There was a rush for the box until every boy felt the same softness between his hands. Chapter 3. A Chicken Roundup. "Right," said Marty. "I have to lock up. Come on, out you all go." He hustled the boys into the corridor. Moments later, he stepped out himself, dropped the empty cardboard box into a wheelie bin and locked the door. "See ya," he called. "Take good care of those chicks." His face showed a devilish grin as he disappeared along the corridor. Mervyn and his friends were too excited to realise he was gone. "What happens if we put them on the ground?" a boy asked Mervyn. "They follow you around, I think." A few of the boys tried it. Their chicks stood still for a moment, staring up at the giants who had been holding them. Then they took off. They raced along the corridor with the boys after them. "Hey, come back!" But the chicks wouldn't stop for anyone. They tumbled down the steps into the playground and kept running. The playground was crowded with boys and girls heading home. Some squealed in surprise when they noticed the yellow balls darting between their feet. Those feet were a problem. One of the chicks would have been crushed if a boy hadn't dived just in time to save it. A foot came down on his finger and he began to cry. "I don't want this silly thing after all." He wailed at Mervyn. "Here, you have it." The terrified chick was shoved at Mervyn. "I don't really want mine either," said a second boy. "Hey, wait a minute," cried Mervyn. How was he going to hold three? He needed a box like the lab assistants. That was it. He hurried back to the wheelie bin, took out the box and placed the chicks inside. When he returned, two other boys had decided they did not want their chicks either. A blur of yellow shot by his leg. It was quickly followed by one of his classmates. "Oh, this is hopeless. Can you catch it, Melvyn? I've got to get the bus." Oh no, poor Melvyn. The bus. Mervyn had to catch the bus as well, but the others wouldn't let him. "Here, take mine," said yet another boy. "I don't think my mum will let me keep it anyway." Mervyn opened the box again. How many did he have now? He'd lost count. There were two chicks still running free. He put down the box and folded the flaps over so that none could escape while he caught the last two. Some of his friends quietly added their chicks to the growing flock in a cardboard box. By the time Mervyn had rescued the last one, he discovered that the box now contained all of the chicks the lab assistant had handed out.